Hello my bookish lovelies, Kira here, and today I am going to regretfully talk about the last book in the Stalking Jack the Ripper series. It's not regretful because I didn't enjoy this last book, it's regretful because this is the last book in the series, and this is the last time I will be having experiences with these characters. The Capturing the Devil is the very last one, and the reason why they call it that is because this actually focuses on Chicago City White Devil and the White Devil murders during the early 1900s, late 1800s. And so they kind of delve into that. Before we get into everything, this book is, of course, because this is the fourth book in the series, there's no way I can make this spoiler free. So I am going to be giving that disclaimer. If you are interested in reading this book or any portion of the series, then I do say that you're going to encounter a lot of spoilers with this, and you may be a little upset. So if you don't want the spoilers, feel free to stop watching now. I understand, but I did want to complete my review on this book because I've done it for the last 3 books in the series, and this is the final one. Here we go with all the discussions and the spoilers. So this book was a little different than the previous 3 books that we had, because this book actually spent half of the book kind of delving into Thomas Cresswell and Audrey Rose's relationship, all of the beautiful things that come with it. I really love them as a couple because they really do complement each other. They both challenge each other, and they are both very much perfect for each other. So the first portion of this book really does read more like a romance than it does a crime novel that we've had with a lot of the other ones. Now granted, there is still a little bit of crime in the beginning of this. You do get them going to a few sites where they think people are being murdered. You do get them investigating, and you do get them a few corpses here and there that they're cracking open like they typically do in the last few books. But I don't feel like this is so heavily focused on the killer in the first half of the book than the other ones were. There was a huge divide. It was they wanted to take a lot of time to kind of dig more into Audrey Rose's and Thomas Cresswell's relationship before they really got into all of the crime stuff that was going on during the time of this book. A lot happens in this book. Thomas Cresswell, actually, come to find out, his father doesn't want him to marry Audrey Rose. They don't want that to happen at all. On the day of their wedding, somebody shows up and says, "Oh, you're actually already engaged to me." At first, I was really kind of upset with Thomas Cresswell because I'm how could you let this happen? Are you, I don't know, there was just something about it that kind of just ticked me off a little bit, because I don't know, I love Thomas Cresswell and everything, but I was just wondering if something was going to get messed up during this, and, I was just kind of irritated. But the more I found out about the situation, the more I realized that, okay, so it really wasn't his fault. I mean, it was definitely his father trying to pry him away from Audrey Rose, and I felt a lot better about that the further we got into it. There is a scene in here that's pretty steamy. This is the scene that we have been leading up to the entire 4 books. I mean, and preceding 3 books. This is the scene. So there is a sex scene in here that I will reference. That was kind of, a little bit. It was still YA, and it was still very tastefully done, but you could definitely tell that was very steamy, and there was a lot going on, and it was nice to see that, from the romance angle, because you've been waiting for so long for something like this to happen. But when that stuff happened at the wedding, the next day, because they did it the night before the wedding, and when that stuff happened the next day, I was so incredibly upset with everything that transpired, because it was such a, to me it was kind of such a letdown. This was her first time and his first time, and it was such a letdown that something like this would happen to them. And I mean, I don't know that I was necessarily upset with the story, with the progression of the story. More along the lines, I think I was more upset with the fact that it happened, and I felt that their whole experience with that was a little bit less than ideal. People who do that for the first time should definitely have the best experience possible, and I feel while they had it as an isolated experience, that experience was great isolated wise. Back in the Victorian era, they were pretty much, especially Audrey Rose in this, was slandered because she was no longer a virgin, and I feel very I don't know, very frustrated about that whole thing. I was glad that as the story progressed, things did get worked out, and they actually found reason to go to Chicago because they found evidence that the killer that has been kind of ravaging New York, where they presently are, where they entered into America, is kind of disrupting things over in Chicago, so that they were able to make a quick escape to Chicago. And it felt kind of rushed. This whole book felt a little rushed to me, and I realized because it's the last book and because, like, you know, you had to get into it, I just feel like this could have been like 2 books. I feel like we could have had one book that was continuing to develop the relationship and the things that were happening with it, and then we also could have had another book that was kind of discussing a little bit more about the killer and the serial killer and everything else. And I don't feel like this book, because of what it was, mashed up these serial killer aspects as well as the other ones. And I will say like this too, I still loved this book, I still really enjoyed it, but the elements like that we were going through for, like the 50-50, like the perfect balances like that I found like in all of the preceding 3 books, I did not feel like I got with this book, which was a little disappointing for me. I mean, don't get me wrong, I still really loved the characters, I still really enjoyed the interaction that I got with the characters, and I still really enjoyed the chemistry and everything, but I feel like this book was rushed. That's the bottom line, is I feel like this book was really rushed because there was a lot more that they could have done with it. But at the same time, I don't know that because of the Chicago City White Devil that they actually had enough material to be able to develop it into more of a story and mainline it into the romance like that was currently going on the way that they were before. But I will say another thing regarding this murder that's in this, I feel like they did a really good job circulating it and bringing it full 60, because they were able to connect this serial killer to the serial killer in Stalking Jack the Ripper, which I felt like was a big deal because it kind of brought the series full circle, which I think was a really important thing to the whole scheme of things, because that made it, when they kind of tied in this killer to the one in Stalking Jack the Ripper, and how there's actually 2 killers instead of 1, big spoiler there, which I warned you guys about. This really kind of brought it full circle, and it really connected this book to the first book, which I felt like was really important because it really made it feel like a cohesive whole series instead of just, you know, like we have 2 characters that are investigating murder after murder. And I felt like that really kind of brought the serial killer aspect to full circle, not just the main characters that were in this. Another thing too that I was really excited to see in this was the fact that we got to talk once again to Mephistopheles, which was the kind of other love interest of Audrey Rose in the 3rd book, Escaping from Houdini. And I love, if you guys saw that review, I love Mephistopheles so much. I think he is just such a great character. He is kind of like the complete opposite of Thomas Cresswell, but I feel like he complements Audrey Rose's rebel side that she has, and so I really appreciated that about her as well. When we got to the serial killer portion of this book, I also it was a good serial killer, like interesting. Like I know he actually happened, and there's like no good serial killers, but the way that they framed it and everything, I felt like did a really good job. And I did feel also, another thing too, I felt like this book was a little bit more predictable, especially like after they got to Chicago. They kind of did some foreshadowing, and then like the person like that I kind of was like, oh, I think that's the killer, turned out to be the killer. She meets him like a little bit earlier, like in the book. I had it spot on. Like I just knew, like without a doubt, like I just knew. I was just like, yeah, that's definitely him. So I don't feel like the surprises in this one were as big either. And I mean, if it wasn't for Audrey Rose and Thomas Cresswell, this would not have gotten a 5-star, but it did because, like, even with all my complaints aside, I just love the main characters just so much, and I feel like that speaks volumes about the characters and the quality of the characters. And I do love this series so much. There was just so many things like that I wish for more for, and I think a lot of it is because I'm lamenting the fact that this is the last book in the series, which kind of really upsets me. So those are my explicit thoughts on this. I feel like I'm glad like everything got resolved for Audrey Rose and Thomas Cresswell. I thought that was very, very important. And yeah, so you guys just saw me ramble about, I mean, the uncut footage of this is like 10 minutes, so we'll see how long this is like by the time I am done editing it. But I do suggest the series. I love the series so much. This I felt like was not as good as the other ones. I feel like this definitely was my least favorite in the series. I think if I were to rank this series like with the 4 books in the order of best to greatest, I feel like the first book was definitely the best, the second book was the second best, the third book was the third best, and this was like, I don't know, I feel like it just was I feel like that the first book was just so amazing that it was on a gentle decline from the first book, and that was just my personal opinion on it. I feel like the first book just made such a great impression on me that I love that book more than I love any of the other books. I think that one was like the defining moments for Audrey Rose. It was the first time I got to meet her, and like I said, I do love all the books, but if I were to rank them, I feel like the first book was definitely my favorite. So those are my thoughts on not only this book but on the series. So I hope you guys like this review. If you guys like this review, hit the like, hit subscribe, hit the little bell icon if you guys want to receive emails every single time I post. Also, I'm on Instagram, Twitter, Amazon, and Goodreads. Those links are linked in the description below, and I will see you guys again very soon.